For today's meditation, we will read from 2 Samuel chapter 16, verses 15 to 22. Now Absalom and all the people, the men of Israel, came to Jerusalem, and Ahithophel with him. And when Hushai the Archite, David's friend, came to Absalom, Hushai said to Absalom, "Long live the king, long live the king." And Absalom said to Hushai, "Is this your loyalty to your friend? Why did you not go with your friend?" And Hushai said to Absalom, "No, for whom the Lord and this people and all the men of Israel have chosen, his I will be, and with him I will remain. And again, whom should I serve? Should it not be his son? As I have served your father, so I will serve you." Then Absalom said to Ahithophel, "Give your counsel. What shall we do?" Ahithophel said to Absalom, "Go into your father's concubines, whom he has left to keep the house, and all Israel will hear that you have made yourself odious to your father, and the hands of all who are with you will be strengthened." So they pitched a tent for Absalom upon the roof, and Absalom went into his father's concubines in the sight of all Israel. Now in those days, the counsel with Ahithophel gave was as if one consulted the oracle of God. So was all the counsel of Ahithophel esteemed, both by David and by Absalom. In the unfolding drama of 2 Samuel, we witness a strategic move by King David in the face of rebellion. David, knowing the wisdom and influence of Ahithophel, his former counselor, who now sided with Absalom, made a decisive choice. He sent Hushai the Archite back to Jerusalem to act as a counterforce, specifically to undermine Ahithophel's counsel. This moment marked the beginning of a divine orchestration to protect David and defeat his enemies. David's prayerful decision bore fruit. Ahithophel's advice, although renowned and respected as if from the oracle of God, was disregarded, and this rejection became the pivot upon which the narrative turned. The question that demands exploration is, why did Ahithophel, a man once highly esteemed by both David and Absalom, turn against his king? The answer lies in his personal connection to one of David's gravest sins. Ahithophel was the grandfather of Bathsheba, the woman whom David had wrongfully taken, leading to the murder of her husband Uriah. We know from 2 Samuel chapter 11 verse 3 and chapter 23 verse 34 that Bathsheba's father was Eliam, who himself was one of the mighty men of David, and Eliam was Ahithophel's son. David's sin with Bathsheba was not just a political scandal. It was a personal betrayal for Ahithophel. His granddaughter had been violated, and the stain of that sin remained in his heart. Bitterness began to take root in Ahithophel, twisting his judgment and leading him to betray David. This bitterness is the core of the story. When harbored, bitterness has the power to turn even the wisest and noblest of hearts toward destruction. Ahithophel's wisdom, once used to guide and bless Israel, now became the tool of his own revenge. Bitterness has a way of distorting our perspective. It can consume the heart and lead to decisions that are irrational and destructive. In Ahithophel's case, he found satisfaction in giving counsel to Absalom that would humiliate and degrade David. He advised Absalom to publicly lie with David's concubines, a grotesque and symbolic act of rebellion. This was not simply political counsel, it was deeply personal. Ahithophel's advice reflected his desire to see David humiliated in the same way that his granddaughter Bathsheba had been. This act of immorality, however, was also a fulfillment of God's judgment on David, as the prophet Nathan had foretold in 2 Samuel chapter 12, verse 11 to 12. David's sin, though forgiven by God, carried consequences. But Ahithophel's role in this judgment reveals a deeper truth about bitterness. It destroys not only the object of one's resentment, but also the bitter person themselves. Ahithophel's second piece of advice to Absalom was to strike swiftly at David while he was weak with a select group of 12,000 men. The plan was sound and would have likely succeeded in eliminating David. Yet Absalom, in his insecurity, sought a second opinion from Hushai, who was secretly loyal to David. Hushai's counsel was clever. It appealed to Absalom's ego, urging him to gather all of Israel and lead the charge himself. This would delay the attack, giving David time to regroup and prepare. Turning point came in verse 14, for the Lord had ordained to defeat the good counsel of Ahithophel, so that the Lord might bring evil upon Absalom. God intervened, not by directly opposing Ahithophel's wisdom, but by allowing it to be disregarded. The rejection of Ahithophel's counsel was a divine answer to David's prayer in chapter 15, verse 31, where David had asked God to turn Ahithophel's counsel into foolishness. Even in the midst of rebellion and personal vendettas, God's sovereignty was at work. He used Hushai's counsel to save David, fulfilling his promises to preserve the line of David despite the turmoil. Ahithophel's fate serves as a sobering reminder of the destructive power of bitterness. When he saw that his counsel was not followed, he returned to his home, set his affairs in order, and hanged himself. This was not merely an act of wounded pride. Ahithophel knew that Absalom's failure would lead to his own downfall. Having aligned himself with the rebellion, there would be no place for him in David's restored kingdom. Bitterness had driven Ahithophel to the point of no return. Rather than seeking God's justice and mercy, he sought to avenge the wrongs done to his family through his own means. In doing so, he sealed his own doom. His tragic death stands as a warning. Bitterness, if left unchecked, will destroy not only relationships, but also our own souls. The story of Ahithophel is a powerful example of the danger of bitterness. Scripture warns us in Hebrews chapter 12, verse 15, see to it that no one fails to obtain the grace of God, that no root of bitterness springs up and causes trouble, and by it many become defiled. Bitterness is like a root, often hidden, but growing deeper and stronger over time. If left unaddressed, it can spread, defiling not only the individual, but many others as well. Ahithophel's bitterness not only led to his own destruction, but also contributed to the unraveling of Absalom's rebellion. In the same way, when we allow bitterness to take hold in our hearts, it doesn't stay contained. It spreads, impacting our families, communities, and even the broader society. It blinds us to the truth and distorts our judgment, leading us to make decisions that we would otherwise never consider. Romans 12:19-21 says, Beloved, do not avenge yourself, but rather give place to wrath. For it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. God calls us to trust Him with the wrongs done to us, to release the desire for revenge, and to seek His justice instead. Forgiveness is the antidote to bitterness. It frees us from the poison of resentment and allows God's grace to heal our hearts. Ahithophel could have sought God's justice, but instead he let bitterness rule his life. His tragic end reminds us about that harboring bitterness leads to destruction. In our own lives, we may face situations that tempt us to hold on to bitterness. But we must remember that bitterness is a thief. It steals our peace, joy, and ultimately our life. Let us guard our hearts with all diligence, turning to God for healing and justice. Jesus said, "The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly." In following him, we choose life, leaving behind the destructive fruit of bitterness. God bless.